Anybody would like to call the meeting to order? If we could get an approval of the minutes from September 26th.
Also moved.
Thank you, Jan. Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And Dr. Anderson, the medical staff meeting summary.
So our staff meeting was on October 17th. So as usual, there were a lot of things discussed at that meeting, so I'll just give you some of the highlights. The first thing we talked about was giving our nurses the authority to automatically test patients for some of the common respiratory viruses we see this time of year, so influenza, RSV, and COVID. So for patients that are admitted to the hospital floor who have respiratory illness, who have not been tested for those viruses, our nursing staff can just go ahead and do that without contacting the providers directly. We talked a little bit about the simplification of our orders for administering contrast with our CT scans. With many of our CT scans, we administer IV contrast to enhance the quality of the images and to improve the diagnostic accuracy. And there historically have been a lot of details and restrictions as far as who can and can't get that contrast. So recently there have been a simplification of those IV contrast orders, and so we talked about that a little bit, and the medical staff approved those new guidelines for administering the contrast. Steve Finn from Physical Therapy talked to us a little bit about the Falls program that they have over there. In our electronic record for certain clinical things regarding patients, we get a alert. It's called a BPA, or Best Practice Advisory. So as we're interacting with people, we can be reminded of something that we may need to take action on. And so for patients that are older than 65 and have had a fall within the last 12 months, the electronic record will alert us that there's a clinical issue there that may need to be addressed, and then that prompts us to go ahead and refer them perhaps to physical therapy if we feel it's indicated. So there was some discussion about that. It was brought to the attention of the medical staff, at least for those who weren't aware, that QuickRx Pharmacy is closing, which I think is pretty common knowledge now. Just an update to our Tiger Connect messaging service. Going live today actually is a new alarms and alerts component. So the emergency room provider will be alerted for medical emergencies through the messaging service. That's something new. And then also in the future, emergency C-sections, the C-section person on call will be alerted through the same process. So the Tiger Connect messaging service continues to evolve for the medical staff. I won't go into details. We got an update from jail regarding recruiting. So last week we met with a couple mid-level provider candidates. We had a little lunchtime with them, and a chance to ask questions and get to know them better. So I won't say more about that. I don't know if Jill's going to mention more about that here later in the meeting, or Barry. We got an update regarding facilities, and again, I won't go into details on that. Barry may share more with you as far as construction or facilities updates that are ongoing. We received an update regarding specialty clinic staffing. So there's been a lot of changes with doctors and mid-level providers at the specialty clinic these past 6 to 12 months. And so we had some updates on that and a little bit of discussion. And then Barry shared with us the organizational goals for the upcoming year, 2024, and then he also reviewed the results of the organizational goals from 2023. We have another Epic upgrade coming up here, well, before the end of the month, October 28th. So twice a year, Epic, our electronic medical record, gets an update, and so that is coming up. We aren't anticipating too many changes with that. We got a chance to formally introduce a couple of new staff members. Amanda Sumner is a nurse practitioner working over in our behavioral health department. So she was at the meeting and we formally introduced her, and then Claire Krogan, new PA, working on the primary care side of things, was also in attendance, and we got to introduce her officially. So those are the basic highlights from our meeting on the 17th.
Any questions for Dr. Excuse me, any questions for Dr. Anderson? No? All right. Thank you. Jeremy Behrens from I. Bailey is here today to present the financial audit report for fiscal year 2023. Jeremy?
All right. Thank you. Just a couple of highlights here. I've talked to your board in the past. I see a lot of familiar faces here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jeremy Behrens. I'm a partner at I. Bailey, formerly Sam Johnson. We had joined I. Bailey back last summer. I want to make a quick thank you to Christy and her team. They were very well prepared for our audit. Last week I met with your finance committee for about an hour or so. We went through the financial statements, some of these slides as well, went very in depth. So what we're doing today is a little bit more of a high level presentation. And my goal here is I work with about 20 critical access hospitals in terms of their audits, cost reports, reimbursements on an annual basis. Primarily in Iowa and Nebraska. So I want to try to give you some information about what I see going on at your facility, as well as some of the trends that I see going on here in the Midwest for critical access hospitals. So what I'm going to present to you are your audited financial statements and your report to the Board of Trustees. Both of these are in draft forms. We're very close to being able to finalize that. I was just talking to Christy, hopefully maybe sometime next week or the week after that, we should be able to finalize the financial statements. Like most facilities, critical access hospitals, larger PPS facilities, you received additional funding over the past couple of years from the CARES Act Provider Relief Funds, which triggered a federal award audit, which that is due 9 months after the end of the fiscal year, which is March 31st, 2024. We do the traditional audit first. We'll come back this winter and work on the federal award audit. So that will be issued subsequent to your main financial statements. Some information here about I. Bailey. Let's skip through there and get to my responsibilities. My responsibility as your auditor is to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from a material misstatement, then express an opinion on those financial statements. I'm going to bounce around on this slide a little bit. Our opinion is a qualified opinion. This is similar to what we've reported in the past. Qualified sometimes is referred to as except for opinion. So basically what we have here is because of the Shelby County Medical Corporation and your relationship with them, under governmental accounting standards requirements would be that those assets and liabilities of that corporation should be consolidated with your hospital financial statements. Consistent with this year and the previous years, you do not do that. These are just standalone hospital-based financial statements. So that's why we have an except for qualified opinion. We're telling the readers of these financial statements that everything is right here except for the fact that we don't bring on the assets and liabilities of that separate corporation. Does that make sense? So if you're thinking about it, these are just the hospital financial statements. It includes the operations of the clinics. It just doesn't have some of those balance sheet components. Okay? So one of the big things that hit governmental entities this past year is GASB 96. This is subscription-based information technology arrangements. Think back a couple of years and think about what the GASB has done, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. They're trying to bring all obligations of governmental entities onto the face of the financial statement so they're easily seen by readers. This was done last year with GASB 87. That was for leases, tangible things, assets, buildings, equipments, things that you can touch and feel. This past year, it was for subscription-based, so the intangible type things. One of the things that you mentioned there was Epic. That's a right to use a particular software. You don't own that software, you don't have the rights for that software, you don't develop that software, but you pay for that right to use that software. So when you have those long-term obligations, whether it's a 5-year, 3-year, 10-year obligation to use a particular software, GASB is now having us bring those right to use that asset and that obligation onto the face of the financial statements. So one of the things that Christy and her team had to do this year, along with the IT group, is go through and scrub all those, yeah, you're shaking your head, no. Scrub all of those arrangements to see what you had out there for particular long-term obligations. Then we discount that back to today's dollars, put it on your financial statements as a right-to-use asset and an offsetting liability. Okay? The standard was never really intended for governmental hospitals, but think about your city of Des Moines or your state of Iowa. Think about all those potential obligations that they have out there and what that number might look like or be useful to the reader of the financial statements to say that, hey, this particular governmental entity has all these obligations out here for software. Okay? So a couple of audit journal entries this year. Throughout the audit process, we received 2 entries from Christy. You had some grant receivables that needed a bit of a true up, and then you received some late invoices after we received the 2023 trial balance. We also had a journal entry here for the allowance for doubtful accounts, contractual adjustments and accounts receivable. And the biggest estimate that's on your financial statements is the settlement with Medicare and Medicaid at the end of the fiscal year. Pretty common. And then lastly, when we were doing some of our cutoff testing, we did notice that you had some late June 2023 charges that weren't booked at the end of the fiscal year just because of timing through the dictation and those sort of things, that we did bring that additional revenue onto the books at the end of the fiscal year. So anytime that we have journal entries or those sort of things, there's an inherent internal control related matter that we have to discuss with the board. The first one being segregation of duties. This is common for those of you that have heard me talk in the past. Pretty much all of our hospitals, even some of our biggest critical access hospitals, have segregation of duty issues. You're never going to employ enough people to fully segregate your finance, business office, those sort of things. Nor do we expect you to. There's kind of a cost-benefit analysis done there. This is more of a reminder to the board that you have an inherent obligation to be part of the internal controls, at least on the financial statement side of things, by reviewing financial statements, asking questions, making sure you're getting appropriate answers. Okay? Then the GASB would also say that entities are required to draft their own financial statements, not just the balance sheet and income statement, but the cash flow and all the footnotes. None of my clients do that. So we're just reminding the board that we're preparing your financial statements based off the trial balance that's given to us for audit. And then since there's obviously some audit journal entries, there's an internal control deficiency there in terms of, hey, you don't draft the financial statements, and there was a couple of journal entries. Now, if this was really concerning or unusual, I would tell you, it's not. This is pretty common for most of our critical access hospitals that we work with. A couple of other required communications. One of the requirements that we have with the state of Iowa, there's a lot of state of Iowa code compliance tests that we do, one of them being your depository resolution. We compare what the resolution says that your board has laid out that you can have a particular amount of funds at particular facilities, and compare that to the actual dollar amount that's at those facilities. Unfortunately, you had additional funds sitting at Town and Country at the end of the fiscal year. So we put that in our report so the state of Iowa sees that, yes, you were over on that particular entity. That's something you will fix probably at this board meeting to update that amount in the depository resolution to say how much funds you can have at that particular facility. Because you are a governmental entity, you are required for employees that are retiring that have not yet met their Medicare date, you're required to offer them health insurance, and because of that, there's an implicit other post-employment benefit obligation out there. Some facilities go out and receive an actuarial study to see what that liability is to your health insurance plan to have that additional coverage. Some facilities don't. Your facility does not. If you were to go out to a Silverstone or a Hub or whomever, get that actuarial study, there would be some additional liability that would be put onto your financial statements for that. Okay, a couple of things that are going on in the industry, RHC rates. This is fairly new. I know we talked about it last year, but it's going to be a big deal, and it's becoming a big deal for some critical access hospitals. In the past, rural health clinics were reimbursed at their cost, right? So this is a projected trend starting in fiscal year 2021 of projected cost per RHC visit. Okay, you can see how we're growing there as time goes on. The government has put a cap on the reimbursement rates for RHCs, and that projected reimbursement rate is here, this second line. So it's not such a big deal in these first couple of years, right? We might have additional costs in and above what we're being reimbursed. Not such a big deal now, but you work your way down the line, and projected 2028, critical access hospitals will be $60 short in terms of what Medicare is paying them compared to their cost per care. Now, your organization was, I got to catch myself up here on my notes, you were $6 behind this year. 2023 was $288 cost per visit, and your cap was $282. Again, not a big deal, not a big spread, but what we want to make sure we have our eyes on is that if this cost trend continues, there will come a point in time where there's a fairly significant gap. So one of the things that Christy and Barry and I have talked about is how do we make sure we're managing that gap? And this isn't only at your facility, this is at all critical access hospitals that have rural health clinics. And that has to do with some payer mix, that has to do with provider mix, that has to do with the way we prepare the Medicare cost report and how we allocate certain overhead costs like utilities, depreciation, administration. We can change some of those things to try to reduce how much cost is getting allocated on the Medicare cost report to the RHCs, and hopefully use those dollars maybe in a different department, a better department, because if we're capped, that extra expense doesn't do anything for us.
So we do allocate indirect costs to the cost per visit?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yep. So your direct costs, your nurses, your
Right.
providers, the
But-
supplies, the
but
drugs, all that,
the-
plus
Okay.
some of Christie's time, some of the billing time, some of the depreciation, some of the
Billing, okay.
utilities, all that stuff,
Okay.
right? So there's things that we can do on the Medicare cost report. We're going to continue to watch that. But there will be probably a time where that gap continues to grow, and we just need to be mindful of that. So some good news, county tax levies, one of the things, there's 82 critical access hospitals in the state of Iowa. Exactly half of those, 41 of those facilities are governmental and therefore receive a tax levy and have a tax base. This is a running total here at the bottom of your tax levy dollars per year. Obviously fairly consistent and straight line over the past number of years. This is the average, this doesn't show up real well. The yellow is the average levy rate and the red is the median. So as you look at this, one thing that really sticks out is your facility has done a really good job of kind of towing the line on passing tax levies along to your community and members of your community. A lot of critical access hospitals have a negative operating margin, and then they recoup county tax revenue to kind of make up the difference. So a lot of your peers are kind of passing the buck via taxes where your facility has really towed the line. This is a big deal for your hospital. As a board member, this is a pretty powerful slide. It kind of tells the tale of, no, we're financing operations through operations, not through additional tax levies. All right, so let's get into some of the financial statement numbers here. I kind of color-coded a lot of this because I think it's easier to see. If you were just to look at this top line here, cash and cash equivalents, you'd see that you moved from $18 million down to $3 million, right? To your general reader, that would send off alarm bells, correct? Right? Cash is way down. Well, it's not. You have to look at the other green slides here. Investments are up, assets limited as to use are up. Basically, you reconstituted some of that cash and cash equivalents, bought a bunch of CDs, put some dollars down in assets limited as use to take advantage of some of the rising interest rates that you're receiving. So you moved it out of cash into investments, bought some CDs. Okay? So I want to make sure we kind of group those together and solve that. But you did have, if you think back to the early days of the CARES Act, one of the first things facilities could do in March and April of 2020 was to ask for some enhanced and accelerated reimbursement. And your organization did this in addition to a lot of other organizations. You basically got prepaid for some Medicare services. When we get to the liability side of your financial statements, last year you had about a $6 million left of those funds that had to be recouped and repaid. That also happened here in fiscal year 2023. So your cash did decrease some because of your construction project, and you repaid some of those final advanced reimbursements from the preliminary CARES Act provided relief funds. Also, one of the things that was working against you is you had a fairly large receivable coming back to you from Medicare, from that Medicare cost report, which that's due at the end of November. That'll typically get paid somewhere around January, February. So that'll be a cash inflow as well. So we talked about the GASB 96 and that new lease accounting standard or software accounting standard. This is one side of the journal entry, bringing on the right to use that asset. The back side is the, where do I need a point here? Behind me? There she goes. The back side here is the liability. So we bring on an asset and the liability. So these are new liabilities related to those softwares. This isn't traditional debt. You didn't take out debt with a bank or issue bonds. This is obligations to software vendors. So that's that yellow line there. Now, we talked about how in the previous year you had some provider relief funds that were still available to be earned, and then you had these advanced recoupments and repayments. You repaid those and you earned these here in fiscal year 2023. The last thing on your balance sheet on the liability side that changed significantly was your net pension liability. Again, because you're a governmental entity, your employees participate in IPERS, right? There's an actuarial study done by the state of Iowa every single year. That's basically a year look back. So at 2022, it took a look at the obligations of the plan at 2021 and the assets available to cover those funds. And because 2021 was a really good investment year, there was a very small gap between the assets available and the obligations. So there was a very small net pension liability last year. Now this year, 2023, is based off of 2022. 2022 was a bad market year, so our obligations stayed the same, our assets went down, so now there's more of a liability there in terms of that IPERS program. So that increase here is related to that actuarial study done. Then the very bottom line here on your balance sheet, net position, this is the difference between your assets and the liability. Good continued growth on your net position over the past couple of years. And a lot of that has to do with your operations, which we're going to get to here on the income statement. So top line, revenue, good volume increases, some rate increases, about a $3 million increase in top line revenue. But in addition to that volume, right, we have additional expenses, we have salaries, we have benefits, we have supplies, we have those sort of things. Fairly consistent operating results here in the last 3 years. Now, because you're part of that IPERS and you get that actuarial study, there's always a paper journal entry that's made to reflect the IPERS actuary calculation. The past 2 years have been a positive entry, actually a reduction in your IPERS expense, which here last year it was $2.6 million, this year it was $2 million, which actually brings up your operating income for the year. One of the things that I like about your financial statements is you don't bury that number with employee benefits. You kind of show it on the face so the readers can see and the board members can see, hey, here's true operations, here's this journal entry for the actuary estimate, and then here's your operating income. It's a little bit easier to kind of see. If you were to bury that, it would make it look like your fiscal year 2023 was worse than 2022, but it's just the result of that actuarial study. Your true operations were very consistent between the 2 years. Now, getting down to the non-operating side of things, we talked about how your facility has reinvested some of its cash into CDs to earn some additional funds. You can see that here on this next line, this blue line, where your investment income this year was about almost $1 million. Again, putting some of those dollars to use in terms of market returns and those sort of things. Now, when we get into some of the slides that show total margin and days cash on hand and cash flow and those sort of things, you have to take those with a bit of a grain of salt. because since 2020, your organization and all hospitals have received significant amount of PPP money, CARES Act provider relief funds. So I wanted to make sure I highlighted that here and kind of show where that's hitting on the income statement. Because again, you have to take it with a grain of salt. Because that's a lot of extra cash infusion from the federal government that doesn't go into operating income, but does hit your bottom line as you earn those particular dollars and use them for their intended purpose. When we get down here to the bottom, your very bottom, your increase in net position, $5 million last year, $4.3 million this year. You take away that IPERS difference, about $600,000. That's pretty much the change that was taking place down here on the bottom line. So 2023 was very consistent operationally compared to 2022.
I just wanted to mention, it looks funny that we have interest expense on there. That's part of that new GASB for the accounting for the...
Right, so you don't have traditional debt, right? You don't have bonds, you don't have debt with the bank, you don't have anything like that. But you do have those obligations either for equipment or building rent or for software. The back side of that journal entry to reduce that liability is principal payments and interest. So while it shows that you have interest expense, it's not traditional debt. It's those lease obligations. Good point. So let's get into some of the metrics for not only your hospital, but also for the 15 largest critical access hospitals in the state of Iowa, and then the median critical access hospital in the state of Iowa. So you, the other big facilities, and then all the critical access hospitals in the state. Now, it's important to know kind of where your revenue's coming from, because not all payers are created equal. Medicare and Medicaid pay you cost. Medicare is supposed to pay you cost plus 1%. Due to Medicare sequestration, they take back 2%, so you actually get 99% of cost. But one of the things that's hitting the industry this past couple of years is the rise in Medicare Advantage volume and revenue. In the past, it wasn't a big piece of your payer mix, but it's growing a lot. And why that is not necessarily a great thing is because Medicare pays you based off of your previous cost structure. And for most hospitals, costs aren't going down, right? So our costs are going up. Our cost per care is going up. We're getting reimbursed based off of basically a year and a half's cost structure. And unlike Medicare, where we do that true up, we saw that you have a large receivable this year because Medicare underpaid you. Well, Medicare Advantage doesn't do that true up. So you've been underpaid and you will not get caught back up from there. Plus, they also do a really good job of trying to deny claims and those sort of things, right? Or at least extend out how long they're going to pay you. Where Medicare pays you around 30 or so days, Medicare Advantage, they're going to deny, they're going to take their time, they're going to pay you later and later and later. So this is a big deal for your business office and your team to keep monitoring and staying on top of those Medicare Advantage plans. Now on the good side, commercial, Wellmark, those traditionally are better payers, right? They're traditionally paying you, I don't know why my slides are doing that, but on the ones in your handouts, it's a little cleaner look. Those are the payers that you want because you're actually going to make a bit of a margin on your commercial and Wellmark. And so you're seeing good increases there on your commercial volume, which is good. And why does that matter? So let's look here. Now, your best payer, commercial, 35 cents on the dollar you write off, which means you're keeping 65 cents on the dollar. Medicare, this is a little bit watered down by inpatient and RHC volume. Traditionally in those settings, you're actually getting paid a little bit more than your costs. So it's bringing down your contractual adjustment where your true cost to charge ratio is probably more like 50 cents on the dollar. So that's traditionally about your cost. So if I can choose which payer I want to come through my door, I want commercial. Because if my cost is 50 cents on the dollar and I'm writing off 35 cents on the dollar, that means I have a 15% margin on commercial. So total margin, again, you, top 15 biggest critical access hospitals in the state, and then the median critical access hospitals. Not surprising because of the CARES Act provider relief funds, and again, I don't know why the slides are doing this, but if you look on yours, it looks normal. 2020 is traditionally the high water mark because you received those CARES Act provider relief funds in 2020 and earned them in 2021 and a bit in 2022 and a bit in 2023, right? So these years are kind of the high water marks because they're propped up by CARES Act provider relief funds and probably PPP loan forgiveness, right? So the trend that you're seeing is fairly consistent with what you're seeing with your peers all along critical access hospitals in Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, Kansas, I don't care where you are. This slide traditionally looks like this. Days cash on hand, same kind of thought process, same kind of metric here. You received a lot of cash up front in early 2020 because of the CARES Act. I've heard it explained as kind of a COVID hangover, right? We were kind of drunk on COVID cash in 20 and 2021. Those days are over. We're back to traditional operations. There's no more PPP loans. There's no more CARES Act provider relief funds from this point going forward, right? So we're kind of back to the 2019, 2020 period where we have to basically hone back in our traditional cost-based reimbursement, look at our payer mix, look at our volumes, look at the services that we're providing and trying to limit some of those non-reimbursable cost centers. So again, not surprising that 2020 or 2021 is kind of the high water mark here because again of all that cash infusion from the CARES Act provider relief funds. But when we get back out here to 2023, 217 days cash on hand is good, right? More often than not, we like to see people with about 120 days or more. You're sitting at 217, which is good. Net days in AR, this is kind of a business office revenue cycle metric. How fast does your facility turn a claim into cash? Or how long does it sit out in accounts receivable before it turns into a payment from Medicare, Medicaid, commercial, the private pay, whatever. So again, not surprising, back here in the COVID days and during your systems conversion, your AR was a bit higher, right? We're slowly working that down. We're fairly consistent with our peers here in terms of the larger critical access hospitals. The bigger you are, the more services you offer, typically the higher number you have, right? Where our smaller critical access hospitals, they're a little leaner, they're a little meaner, they might have one RHC, no home health, no home health or hospice. They don't have those additional billing things that typically will take a little bit longer. So good metric here for your organization. I'd still like to see that get down a little bit more, but it's not a number that's concerning. Pretty average for your peer group. Outpatient revenue percentage. This and the next slide kind of tell the story of how a critical access hospital can make money. You don't make much money on the inpatient services because it's a real high cost per care, right? And traditionally it's a Medicare or Medicaid volume which pay you cost, right? So hard to make money in a setting where you're getting paid cost. Your opportunity lies in outpatient commercial volume. So we want this slide to be as high as possible. If I have my choice of what kind of service I'm going to provide, it's going to be outpatient. So this is good. Lots of outpatient volume at your hospital. And when it does happen, I want it to be as little Medicare as possible because that means it's potentially commercial or Wellmark. So you have a lot of outpatient volume and less of it's coming from Medicare. Two good slides for your organization. Which again kind of goes back to some of the results that you've had on the income statement side. You've had strong income statements as long as I've worked with you in the past several years. And even before that, you had strong income statements. And it's a lot to do with these two slides. You have a lot of outpatient commercial volume. Some of that's due to where you're located, and some of it's due to the services that you offer to your patients. Outpatient cost of charge ratio. This is what does it cost me to provide a unit of service. So let's look at it this way. Back in 2020, if I had a $100 lab charge, it costed me $49 to do that service. The next year it was $47, the next year it was $46. So not surprising, again, when COVID was here, our volumes were down, our costs were still high because we kept all our employees on, because we had the PPP loans, right? So our cost per unit was traditionally highest in 20 and 2021. And we're slowly working back down to some of our more traditional cost per units. So this is a good slide, again, for your organization, right along with your peer group here. And getting back to what Christy was mentioning, you do have a little bit of debt on your books, but it's not your traditional debt. 2020, you had some traditional debt because you, like a lot of organizations, received paycheck protection loans, but that was forgiven in fiscal year 2021. What you have left on your books is the backside of that, the new accounting standard for the leases and the softwares. But that's the same thing for these organizations as well. Ultimately, what I'm saying is your organization is very unique in the fact that you carry little to no debt on your balance sheet, where some of your peers are fairly highly leveraged in terms of their balance sheet. And then lastly, average age of plant. This is just an algebraic formula of depreciation expense divided by accumulated depreciation, just to get a sense of what your average age of plant is. Fairly consistent over the past couple of years. Ultimately, this tells me that your organization reinvests back into the hospital, right? If we just keep seeing this number grow and grow and grow and grow and grow, that means your facility is getting older and I'm not buying new stuff, I don't have new depreciation, we're letting the facility age. If it kind of stays fairly consistent, that means we're putting money back into the hospital. We're buying new equipment, we're doing renovation projects, those sort of things. So kind of unique that, you don't have a ton of debt and you have a fairly low average age of plant. Typically, I see a really low average age of plant and a boatload of debt, because that's how they got the facility. So we went through a lot of information there. Trend line, typically what I've been seeing on most of my critical access hospitals, again, we're kind of getting out of that COVID phase. Facilities are starting to look at the services that they're providing. They're looking at feasibility studies. They're looking at master facility plans. They're trying to plan for the future, keeping those outpatient services in mind. I very rarely have a CEO or CFO come to me and say, hey, I want to talk about putting $20,000 or $20 million into a new inpatient wing, because that's not where your opportunity lies in a critical access hospital. If we were to look at trend line in terms of average daily census for inpatient and swing bed, over the years it looks like this, right? Less and less inpatient, more and more outpatient. So we did have a conversation when we were out here for audit talking about some of the potential renovation projects and things that you have potentially coming up. And again, all those are generally geared towards outpatient settings, a lot like your peers are looking at. So questions, comments, anything I can answer for the board?
Any questions for Jeremy? Well, Jeremy, thank you for presenting, but Christy, wow, thank you.
Chrissy does a good job.
Yes.
I really enjoy the relationship when she has, one of the nice things is when I come out for an audit, I typically know what's going on at the facility.
Yep.
Because
Good job.
every once in a while, Chris will pick up the phone, hey, we have this thing going on, I'm thinking this, is that right? Like, yep, that's right. Or no, let's tweak it a little bit, and this is how some of your peers do it. Get a hold of XYZ at facility ABC, this is how they do it, right? So when I show up on site, there's not a lot of big surprises, which is great for me and you as a board, right? We don't want big surprises on our financial statements. We don't want to be shown one thing throughout the year and then I come in and say, no, it was really this. And to me, that's probably the most powerful message that I can have for your board, is that I'm confident in your facility, the way they do their accounting estimates. They're typically fairly conservative when it comes to those sort of things. So you should be, we need more Christies in our life.
Thank you, Christy.
We don't need to approve anything right now since this is still draft and we won't get the final until we have the single audit done, but it's pertinent now to go over it while we're still close to last year and working on this year. So
Yep.
Thank you, Jeremy, and his team does a great job. And
My contact information there is on that second slide. We're employed by the board. We sign an agreement with you, an arrangement letter every single year. If you have a question today, tomorrow, 6 months from now, give me a call, shoot me an email, reach out to me. I'll answer whatever question you might have.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well, Laura, after all that, you're up for the quality improvement report.
Okay, the September 20th QI meeting, OB reported that there was no primary C-sections for that quarter, which is where we want to have a lower number on that, and there was no early elective deliveries, which is also where we want to be. Their exclusive breastfeeding rate is hanging around that 78 to 80%, which continues to be a huge improvement. Pharmacy reported no adverse drug events, and there's been a kind of a big push on monitoring inpatients on discharge for appropriate pain medication. So there's been a lot of collaboration on that measure. Public health, they were over 98% on all of their measures, and that was related to learning for life screenings and vaccine documentation. For infection prevention, they evaluated for catheter-associated infections, which there were none. And then also the implementation with that interface of Bugsy with Epic has been really a great change and a great change in process, I guess. For the rural health clinic, they reviewed the ACO measures for the Medicare ACO, and those are really all trending in the right direction as we kind of get closer to the end of the year. Senior Life Solutions monitored fall risks and hand hygiene, as well as follow-up phone calls in all of their patients after discharge from Senior Life Solutions. 100% are receiving appropriate follow-up phone calls. And surgery, there was no post-op blood clots, post-op sepsis, or post-op total hip or knee complications. So that is my report.
Okay, sounds pretty good. Any questions for Laura? Okay, moving on. Jim Zimmerman, personnel report.
The Personnel Committee met this morning at 7. We had 2 initial appointments and 8 reappointments, and I'll make a motion, and no voluntary withdrawals. I'll make a motion to approve those.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Jill, you're going to present the 2024 health plan, it looks like?
Yep,
All right.
I am. So what you're looking at here, this is the hospital's net fiscal year costs year over year for our medical, prescription drug, dental claims and expenses. This is also reported in our financial statement. So you can see costs, they continue to trend upward. Healthcare costs are not going down. And as net costs, this is less what employees pay in premium, our net. So the $3.2 million estimated cost is what we looked at last fiscal year. It was estimated that's where we would come in at, and that is essentially right where we came in at, is that 3.2 million in costs. So this was a projected 2.7% premium increase, which at that time last year, we requested approval from the board to absorb those costs. So we passed on 0% increases to our staff for their medical and their dental premiums last year. Since we have entered into what's called a multiple employer welfare arrangement, a MIWA, with 8 other RICHA hospitals, Barry has mentioned this in the past. The RICHA hospitals are the Rural Iowa Community Health Alliance. And the idea behind doing that, entering into that arrangement, is that we can pool our plans and stabilize our healthcare costs a little bit better by pooling with a larger group of members and spreading our risk and claims across a larger pool. So we have entered into that MIWA, which will start effective January 1st, 2024. And when we were going through the estimates and the projections, the actuarial analysis estimated that had we not combined with a MIWA and just stayed on our own, same plan design, not combined, our estimated total cost would have increased about 11.4%, which is a significant increase year over year. A larger one than we've ever seen. I don't know that we've ever seen, but a larger one in the last 5 years that we've seen. So it was projected that we would realize some pretty significant savings by combining with that RICHA group. And at the same time, we modeled some new healthcare plans. They're called point of service plans that we're going to start offering to our employees. And these plans are really a network of providers, primarily in the state of Iowa. So it's a more narrowed provider network, but provides lower cost, lower premium cost to individuals who utilize the providers within that network. So they are throughout the state of Iowa, as well as within some neighboring counties in Nebraska. So these are considered contiguous counties where our members are going to get the same coverage at a lower premium by utilizing in-state providers as well as providers along that Nebraska border. We will be communicating with staff about the changes because it's important that they know how to identify the service providers in this new network. But what's significant about it is it does provide us a deeper network discount in exchange for those lower premiums. So looking at, we made some assumptions if a third of our members migrated to these new point of service plans and what that would do to our overall costs. So overall costs, a little bit less than what we originally anticipated at a 3.5% increase in our total costs. So we would share that across our eligible members, enrolled members, and Myrtue. I did want to show you what our plan enrollment has been year over year. So we continue to trend upward in our high deductible plan. It should show the blue is actually our high deductible plans. This was our strategy all along, that we would continue to see movement from the PPO to the high deductible health plans. They tend to outperform PPOs. It is because, employees have more skin in the game. They are paying a little more upfront in their deductibles under a high deductible health plan. But overall, they're making better consumer decisions in those plans and ultimately costing us less. So what's happening is exactly what we have wanted to happen over the last few years. And so we're going to continue to we'll continue to offer the PPO and the high deductible health plans with the health savings account option. We're also going to be adding a coverage tier of employee plus children. So currently we provide for employee only, we provide employee plus spouse and family coverage. Going under the MIWA, the coverage tier of employee plus children is something that all hospitals will be adding. We're adding the lower premium point of service plan options. And Myrtue will continue to subsidize premiums at approximately 75 to 80%. What's unique about our plans, we are able to offer a lower domestic deductible, and that's to incentivize our employees and their dependents to utilize their services here at Myrtue. So their costs apply to a lower deductible by doing that. Also by combining with the MIWA, our plans were pretty rich. And so to be consistent with the other plans, we will have to adjust our copay visits. So our staff, the last couple of years, we're used to a $15 copay to be seen in the physician's clinic. That will go up to $25. We also recently had reduced our copay to be seen at our rehab services for physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. Again, our plan was quite rich and needs to be equitable across the other plans, and so those copays will be consistent with other plans within the RICHA plan, and will go up to $45 copay per visit. Myrtue will continue to contribute a sizable amount to our employees' health savings account if they elect that high deductible option. So these amounts essentially help them offset their premiums and their out-of-pocket costs. So anyone who enrolls in employee-only coverage, the company, Myrtue, is going to contribute up to $600 to their HSA. For that employee plus spouse or employee plus children, Myrtue will contribute up to $900, and for family, will contribute up to $1,200. And that's per plan year. And that money rolls over year after year, so staff are able to kind of generate a pretty sizable retirement savings account at times. The in-house pharmacy program is something we'll continue to offer. That's a significant benefit to our employees who are utilizing either high-cost specialty medications or high-cost maintenance drugs. We're able to dispense those through our 340B program at literally zero out-of-pocket cost to our own employees and dependents. It's a big benefit. Dental and vision for 2024 will remain unchanged. We offer those plans through Delta Dental and VSP. And then as far as our voluntary coverage, accident, critical illness, and cancer coverage, last year we migrated to Guardian as our carrier. However, that is changing to Symetra this year, but if anybody was utilizing Guardian and wants to continue with that coverage, they may do so. It's a choice. So our total medical and dental costs for 2024 are $3.45 million and $121,000 for dental, a total of $3,567,928. That is a 3.5% medical premium increase that we are asking the board's approval to cost share that among our enrolled members. We have not passed on cost increases for the last few years. We are also requesting approval to absorb, for Myrtue to absorb the low dental increase that we're seeing for next year. So a 3.5% medical increase is what I will need approval on from the board.
The 3.5% includes the dental premiums, or that's separate?
You know, with the 0.2% dental, it's right in there. It's 3.5.
Okay. And you want one approval or separate approvals?
I think one approval is fine.
Okay, all right. Well, I
So
need...
it's really low.
Oh, okay.
Ours.
Pre-enrollment in the health insurance.
Okay, we have a motion,
I'll second.
and we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Amazing benefits. I hope the employees
I hope so
appreciate
too.
them. Amazing benefits.
Yeah, I do.
All right, Barry, it looks like it's your turn.
Just give you a little bit of an update on the master facility plan process. We started this in August. Really started with kind of the data analytics with the architect, and that's really just looking at our population, our referral patterns, our current trend, trending over the last 4 or 5 years, to kind of, I think, really it kind of confirm maybe what we already knew about our hospital and those things. So really the purpose is to tell us how many inpatient rooms do we need, how many exam rooms do we need in the rural health clinic versus specialty clinic. And again, Jeremy talked about inpatient trending, so we know that we probably don't need 25 inpatient beds now. We're not planning to decertify any, but we probably won't staff 25 beds like we have in the past, or have 25 beds available for patient care moving forward. Looked a lot at the rural health clinic, and a lot of the number of exam rooms that we will need over there dependent on the type of model that we use. There's a pod model that we've used for many, many years. There's an on-stage, off-stage model, and then there's a hybrid model. And those latter two models really are use that space much more efficiently, and probably wouldn't require as many exam rooms as if we stay with the current pod model that we have. So that has to be determined moving forward, what type of model we want to move forward with in the rural health clinic. We did have some visioning meetings early on in September. I think it was September 19th. We had that first set of meetings. Started out with the medical staff, and then rural health clinic, medical, med-surg, inpatient, outpatient specialty, and clinic surgery. All of those were separate meetings, kind of visioning and setting goals on what we want to accomplish with this master facility plan. We did have another set of meetings with the departments to talk more about potential suggestions and solutions. I did get from the architect kind of some potential layouts for the future for all of those areas, and I really felt like we wanted to stop at that point and get a better understanding of what our cost estimates would be, which then would allow us to do a better job of budget planning, kind of working with the board and the Building and Grounds Committee. So they're in the process. We do have Murray involved in this process, our current construction manager, so they will do the cost estimating on what they provided us so far. Now, we're nowhere near being done with this. We need to have several more meetings with department managers and with the medical staff as well. But this kind of gives us a baseline of what we're looking at from a cost standpoint. I think we're probably going to need to visit some other locations, mainly for the rural health clinic. That question about the current pod model that we're using versus on-stage, off-stage versus hybrid. I think that's going to require us to look at what some other hospitals have done and look at what that on-stage, off-stage model looks like, or hybrid model, in order to really understand how we would want to move forward with that rural health clinic. And then finalization of design, board involvement. Like I said, I want to get the Building and Grounds Committee involved, but eventually we will bring this back to the board, very high level at that point, show you what they've come up with, tell you what the estimated cost is, and then we would likely ask for approval to move forward with the architect to do the more detailed design. And I would expect that to happen maybe in December or January timeframe. I think they've got a fairly fast timeline, the architect does, but I think it's going to take a little bit longer than what we initially set out. Some of the goals for each of the various areas, and this is very high level, this came from the architect based on his meetings with each of the departments. So again, need to evaluate the various clinic models, pods, hybrid, on-stage, off-stage. Obviously, we will need additional exam rooms. If we continue with the pod model that we have right now, we will definitely need more exam rooms than what we have right now. And if we go to one of those other models, it would allow for more efficient use of those exam rooms and potentially maybe not have to increase that many exam rooms. Of course, increased storage is included there, improved circulation and flow. Those are kind of the high-level items for the rural health clinic. There's a lot of other, items that are going to be included as we move forward that are needs as we look at this in more depth. Outpatient specialty clinic, increased nurses station size. That's really an important one for the outpatient clinic. Add some exam rooms, some dictation spaces, improve the check-in layout, add a procedure room. Surgery, really the only thing there was the adding of a procedure room and increased storage space. And in the med-surg unit, modernized department, improve ICU rooms, improve patient showers and toilets, and of course the ever-present need for more storage space. So those are that's just kind of a high-level look at the goals. Again, we've got quite a bit more work to do. I just wanted to give you an update on kind of what we have done so far. Any questions on that? Just a couple comments about CON, Certificate of Need. The Iowa Hospital Association is already anticipating that that's going to comes up every year, each legislative session. Last year, the Senate did pass a bill that would have made significant changes that IHA did oppose. The bill quickly died in the House, so it didn't go any further, but it's likely that it's going to come back in 2024. So they're asking for our help in contacting our legislators right now and kind of get on top of that. The other CON item, I guess, that's going on here in Southwest Iowa is the Manawa Behavioral Health 96-bed inpatient behavioral health proposed facility will go through the CON process. We did write a letter of support for that, facility. They have not met yet. The CON council has not met yet. It's my understanding they need to appoint a couple of new members to that council, but that should be happening very soon. So we're hopeful that that goes through, and I can't imagine that it wouldn't, considering the needs everybody has from a behavioral health standpoint, pretty much everywhere. So just some updates on that. I did want to just talk about the wellness center facilities a little bit. I'm actually going to pass this on to Jeff. We have spent, the facility's about 13 years old now. We have spent some additional dollars here just in the last couple of years on the facility, the wellness center facility. And we've got a fairly big expenditure coming up here. And I want the board to be aware of it, and I'm going to ask Jeff to kind of describe what we're talking about with our ERV repair that needs to happen.
Yeah, Drew's going to chime in here too, but I'm going to first start with some of the work that has happened over the last couple years. We have a couple very, very large pieces of air handling equipment. One's called a Ceresco, one's called an ERV. The Ceresco's had a lot of work done, and what that is a dehumidifier for the pool area. We spent quite a bit last year before, and that's all up and running like it should be. We've improved some of the circulation pumps for the pool, the heat pump heaters for the pool water. We had two boilers before that were in bad shape. We now have 3 boilers that cycle so that they're not all running at the same time. Also provided a lot more efficiency and backup. We've done some flooring work in the locker rooms, got those all fixed up. A lot of plumbing work that has been done on those showers, had some issues there. Also improved or upgraded the boiler, hot water boiler. It had some issues a year ago. That's all up and running nicely now. We also, last year in the spring, that building is on a geothermal system, and the glycol loop froze last year. So we had some work that we had done there. Found out that essentially what had happened over the years is as the coolant got low, water was just added and not necessarily glycol added, and that's the reason it froze. We also found out it was quite a bit low on the volume of liquid. Found out that there's an expansion header that was not terminated correctly or closed off correctly when it was installed, and it was leaking. So we got that corrected. Ended up adding several hundred gallons of glycol. Now, the first thing once they got it back up and running is people were complaining it was too cold in there, so we knew it was working quite well. So doing some really good improvements, getting everything, we've added preventive maintenance agreements on the large equipment, and I think there's 36 heat pumps that are in there as combined with the geothermal loop, which kind of brings us to the ERV, and I'll let Drew explain what the ERV is.
So the ERV is a energy recovery ventilator, and it's a big piece of equipment, about half the size of this room. It has a big wheel in it that's probably 8-10 foot across, and this unit runs 24/7. So as it's bringing fresh air in and exhausting the old stale air, this wheel spins and it mixes your indoor out air that's going out with the incoming air to save money to preheat it in the winter or cool it in the summer. So that unit it serves everything but the 2 pool areas, so the main wellness center pool and the PT pool. It pulls all the humidity out, it gives our air exchanges, it filters the air, all this. Well, on this unit, that big wheel over the years, the bearings have gone out, but as it runs 24/7, you don't catch it all the time, and damage has happened to that shaft of the wheel. Well, that has happened again, and it's to the point where it's not repairable, so we have to change that wheel out. So over the years since we built this building, Vinmar is the company that built that unit. They have now been bought out by like Myrtue. So we have to have a custom-made wheel. And it's a big piece of equipment to get up there. And I mean, there's some refabricating of the cabinet. It goes into changing of motors altogether. So as the big expense, that's what we're kind of talking about. So without that unit, it did go down last year for a couple weeks. The sensor went out. I don't know if any of you are in there, but the walls were basically sweating. We had water running off all the windows. So it's kind of a urgent deal, and very important to not cause damage to the rest of the facility.
So the cost of that is?
Cost is approximately $84,000. It is a custom wheel and custom work. There's some additional, for example, there is a set of double doors on the west side of the room that we can lift the wheel up to go in. However, we have to take the cloud down in order to get access to that. So there's a little bit of extra work that needs to occur just because of the design of the building. Little electrical work to move a few things so we can get access to the equipment that's up there. The device was assembled in place. It wasn't in one big unit and put in. It was brought in pieces and assembled. So, and like Drew said, it literally would fill over half this room. It's that size. Same with the Ceresco to give you a picture of how big that is. But it's 13 years old, I believe, 13, 14 years old, and 24-hour constant running. Things will start occurring. So we feel that we get this up and going, the air handling and everything it'll be in good shape.
So we are planning on moving forward with that. It doesn't require board approval, but wanted to make sure you understood. We are spending quite a bit of money over there right now with the facilities, but it's important that we make those investments in that building moving forward.
I think it's good that we're updated on large expenditures like that. I'm not implying staff, but the maintenance will be handled differently now, so.
We entered into preventative maintenance on all of the equipment over there 2 years ago.
Okay.
So we do have, it's Rasmussen that comes and does the preventative maintenance on that ERV.
Okay.
Jacob Hazen does a daily check on everything over there, and going through and noticed that wheel was not spinning. So he identified the issue. We had Rasmussen come in and validate how big of an issue, if it was an issue at all. Gave us the great news, and then we just have to decide to move forward.
Okay, all right, thank you. Barry, anything else?
Do you want to?
The construction update. As you can see outside, concrete was poured, so that's a really good accomplishment a couple weeks ago. And I don't know if you noticed this morning, but there were at least, I think Barry counted six pieces of steel upright already mounted. So all the steel is in. Inside the building, the demo is about 90-95% complete. There is, I believe, one wall that still has to come down, but it's about 8 foot in size. They have roughed in all of the plumbing under floor and are ready to pour concrete back over the top of that. So there's some great progress there. And I believe you all should have gotten an invite on November 2nd. We're going to have a beam signing that will, for the board, we'll meet here, we'll go down, also give you a quick little tour on everything that's going on in there. Show you, and Terry, I don't know if you're interested in the utility plant, we can walk through that. Not everybody has seen what it was before versus what it is now, but some great progress is being done on the emergency department. So we had a couple hiccups Murray felt we were about 3 to 4 weeks behind, and now they feel we are caught back up on our original due date. So, yeah, things are looking good. Over the next probably 3 to 4 weeks, we will see more concrete being poured. We'll see the retaining wall outside of Barry's windows be installed. So outside, their goal is by the end of November to have everything done that they can essentially have it winterized so that they can work inside, outside of the elements. So great progress being made.
I think that email we got said noon for the beam sign. This says 11, so.
Well, we kind of have we're gonna have employees start at 10:30.
Oh, okay.
So employees will have the ability to come in and sign the beam.
Okay.
At 12 o'clock, we want all of you to be here. 12:15, we'll end the beam signing. We'll have a photo opportunity. And at 12:30, we're planning on the beam being raised and placed and secured. So we all have the opportunity to watch that. It'll be real exciting. Watch a piece of steel go across, set up there, a couple bolts put in, and that'll be about it.
That's all.
That's all. Kelly?
Good morning. I'm Kelly. I'm the perioperative manager here. I am here to present an endoscopy proposal for new endoscopy equipment that we would like to purchase. The reason why we're asking for this new proposal is we have a service contract that was ended in July of 2023. It was a 3-year contract. And basically, we are looking at a 125% increase into that contract. So Christy and I kind of sat down and evaluated our current equipment and how we wanted to proceed forward with that increase. The reason of the increase that we're looking at is because of the repairs that we have done over those 3 years and then the aging assets of each of those equipment. So this slide here, sorry, it's kind of small for us, but if you look at the blue over here, this is what we used for our contract, and this is what we were contracted for. So I believe we ended up using about 144% of this contract. This next slide is going to show us that we had 2 colonoscopy equipment, so 2 scopes that we used. It was a breakdown of 2 repairs for 1 scope equal 11,000, and then we had 6 on our second scope equaling 37,000. So basically, we typically do about 600 to 700 scopes a year. So that's a lot of wear and tear on just 2 colonoscopes. We also have 2 EGD or upper scopes that we also have. Each one of them had a repair. And as you can see, some of the repairs can be pretty significant in price. So, and then as in the green, it is marked up when we purchased the equipment. So the main equipment we have here was purchased in 2017. The scopes, some of the scopes are 13, 15, and so you can see they're aging. So we're proposing, so what we did is we looked at 2 companies. We had Fujifilm is the company that came in and we actually demoed it. We did that for about a week, so Dr. Hodges and Dr. Bernal got to play with the equipment and make sure it was suffice for them. Olympus is the current company that we use now. And basically what they proposed to us was a whole new, brand new technology system that hasn't even been released to the Midwest yet. We reviewed all the technology that was presented in this equipment, and we basically decided that the technology is fantastic. However, for our facility and the needs that we would have here at Myrtue, Fujifilm would probably be more appropriate with it. So basically what you're going to see here is that we did ask for 3 colonoscopes from the Olympus team, and then we had purchased a brand new pediatric scope in February of 2023. So that would have equaled 4 scopes total. And then we're just going to keep our 2 EGD scopes requested. Fujifilm, you're going to see a little bit different. We're going to see a full new system. We requested 4 colonoscopes and 2 EGD scopes, so that would increase our inventory by 2 colonoscopes. Some of the quotes that we looked at, so Olympus with their brand new technology, and the items that we requested was $225, $694, and 38 cents. They do buy back their own product, and so you're going to see a little bit of a higher increase on the trade-in value with the Olympus since it's their own product. Fujifilm will also purchase the Olympus products that we have now at $34,150. So their quote ended up being $172,930.71. So what we would be getting, so here's an example of what we'll be getting. So this is a light source and this is the processor, so we'll be receiving that. We'll get a 32-inch monitor, which is an upgrade from a 27-inch monitor that Dr. Bernal is super excited about. And then our 2 EGDs and 4 colonoscopes. What our inventory will now look like are 2 normal scopes, so just your basic colonoscopes. You're gonna have an ultra slim or a pediatric scope. And then we have a hybrid that was requested. The hybrid basically allows a wider view inside the colon and a retroflex feature on there that the doctors enjoyed. So they really wanted one of the hybrids on there. So that would increase, like I said, our colonoscopies by 2. That decreases the wear and tear on each of the scopes. And it's very patient specific. So now we can use the ultra slim. We don't do a lot of pediatrics, but we do a lot of elderly, small elderly women in particular, that ultra slim would be a benefit on. And then anything complex, really, we can use that hybrid and start changing the lights on the hybrid to see like if there's a source of bleeding, what kind of inflammation we're looking at. So there's a lot of good technology associated with that too. And then we're just going to keep the 2 EGD scopes that we have currently. That is suffice for the amount of EGDs that we do here.
That works on the equipment that you're buying.
Correct. Absolutely. So along with that, there is a service contract that I am proposing for approval today also. If you look at our service contract, typically you get warranties. And so with warranties, it covers like some basic like a broken light or something very basic. With your contracts, you're servicing the entire contract, the entire equipment. And by purchasing the service contract at the time we purchase the equipment, we're actually getting a discount, a pretty significant discount. If you look at the contract, you're going to see that the light source and the processor has $0 associated. That's just part of the benefit of signing it when we get the equipment. So we are looking at, I'm so sorry, it's a distance, $78,000, I believe, for that grand total for 60 months on that. And that's going to cover your colonoscopes, your EGDs, your light source, and your processor. So there's no turnaround time. It typically takes about 3 weeks, may take up to 6, just kind of depends. So we'll get this equipment relatively quick once we get if we get the approval. So I am asking for the endoscopy equipment and the service contract for today.
And you did say that both doctors mentioned preferred?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so Dr. Bernal's group, actually, Dr. Bernal is the one that directed me to Fujifilm.
Oh, okay.
His company in Lincoln, Nebraska currently use Fujifilm. And then his practice in Omaha is starting to look at Fujifilm now, so they're actually going to probably transition into this product also.
We need a motion for the purchase of the equipment of $172,930 and the service contract for 5 years for $78,735.
Was any of that budgeted?
This,
That was-
budgeted.
This was not.
No, this was kind of an unexpected, just due to that service contract increase.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I move approval.
I'll second it.
Motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Same.
Thank
Opposed,
you.
same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Christie.
So,
Thank you.
as mentioned in our depository resolution, we had, we always look for the best interest rates on money, and Town and Country hadn't been offering us, and then they decided they made us a couple great offers we couldn't resist. So we did exceed our depository resolution, so we're just basically going to the depository resolution, increasing it to $6 million that we can have at all facilities for investments, and we should not exceed that moving forward. So any questions on that? So we need a motion.
You need a motion on the depository resolution for $6 million at all facilities? Is that what you're
Well,
saying?
did you put it in here, Ruth?
It's in there.
It's on
Yeah.
page 8.
All except mid-states would be 25
Yeah,
million.
mid-states is our main one,
Oh,
so
I
it
see. I see it.
exceeds
Page 8.
budget and that.
Right. Motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve this.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
I'll
same sign.
abstain from our bank. From that.
Okay.
Oh, maybe,
Yeah, I should
I
do.
should maybe abstain too. I'm on the board. It's great.
All right, now
Sorry.
we're going to change to, did you get those, Ruth?
Yes.
Okay. Motion still passed.
Well, I think you can still vote on, I'm just abstaining from the
From that
piece
one
of our,
particular
from our institution.
Oh, your bank, okay.
Yes.
I misunderstood.
We're abstaining 3 people now.
For one institution.
For just one institution.
I'm just abstaining from our bank.
You're abstaining.
We still have
We still have a forum.
We still have 4.
That's good.
What's the question?
We
I
have
just
3
wondered if we had a
extensions.
quorum
actually.
because we were abstaining. Tom's gone, so we're okay though. It sounds like,
I only have 2. Okay. All right,
I thought there was 3.
moving on.
I have to.
Yeah.
For stress.
Right. He has
Sure.
to abstain on Farmers Trust.
So there's 3 abstentions then.
Well, but just on.
Just on the,
Just on the
from that
bank.
bank.
On one bank.
Right.
He's abstaining on Farmers
I think
Trust.
for each, you know, we could do how many motions for each one, but, and then there's only one for Shelby County.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
No
you're
more
good.
bankers on the board.
But we still have 4.
Right. Yeah, we're okay. All right. Christie, you're still,
So we have the September financial report, so we're into the fiscal year 3 months. In September of '23, we had over 4,700 outpatient visits, 500 emergency room visits, 101 surgical procedures. The physician clinic visits were 3,319. Behavioral health was 1,143. We did have a pretty good reduction in the number of our average daily census was 7.07 compared to 8.65 last year for September. As you can see, that swing bed is one of them that's really changing quite a bit. So again, as we've talked before, the insurance companies are wanting those patients to go to the nursing homes. We had 4 births in the month of September. Last year we had 11. 4.3 million in revenues, 4.4 million in operating expenses, resulting in a loss. Then we had $61,840 in non-operating net, which again is investment. So we had a small $26,000 loss for this month of September compared to a $48,000 profit last year. Year to date, you can see all the same 3-month ending for outpatient visits is up 3.2%. ER visits are down 3.6%. Surgical procedures are up 10.3%. Physician clinic visits are down 3.5%. Behavioral health visits are down 15.6%. Our average daily census is down 20.7%. And births are down 40.7%. Revenues are up 2%, expenses are up 3.7%. Our non-operating net is up significantly, and that again is because the markets have rebounded a little bit on our long-term investments, plus our CD rates are considerably higher now than we were getting a year ago. So we are at year-to-date $121,000 profit this year compared to a $17,000 loss last year. You want to look at our 4-year comparable again. You can see our outpatient visits continue to increase. Our ER visits really continue to increase from what they were in 2020. You know, this year, just because of the move and being in a different location might be affecting that. You know, it's not as maybe easy to get into. Surgical procedures are increasing. You know, Dr. Hodges has been here a year now, so I would anticipate that continuing to go up. Physician clinic visits, we're down a little bit. You know, we've got some transition with our providers going to ER. We're in the process of hiring some new staff for the new providers, so that hopefully will go up. Behavioral health, they saw a spike last year. This year we're down a little bit, but we have been down some providers over there also. Again, our average daily census came up there during COVID, but again is back down to a little bit lower than it was in 2020. Births, we have had a slow start to this year. I've been in, I believe in November, December, we're scheduled to have 10. Some of our November babies have already come in September or in October, so we're going to see, I've been told, an average of 8 to 10 a month is what Michelle is anticipating. So, and then you can see we continue to see an increase in our revenues and our expenses. Just to mention some of the things Jeremy mentioned, our AR that is one thing that we always watch. One of our compliance quality measures is looking at denials. As we see more and more Medicaid Advantage plans in our area, we see more denials. CMS is really kind of cracking down on that, though. They have put in a portal for us to file situations with them and give them the information of when we see it's not appropriate, when we feel it's not appropriate, that Medicare Advantage plans are delaying payments or denying claims. They are not meant to be here to prevent patients from getting care, and so that's what they're concerned with. So our AR does continue to go up a little bit, and we did have an additional Medicaid MCO come into the state of Iowa July 1st. So there's always that transition into a new payer where we hold claims for a while just to make sure everything's set up so we're not dealing with a lot of denials. So we are holding those claims, so they're getting a little behind, but we'll file them and they'll pay pretty quickly. They've been a good company to work with, so we hope that that continues. Any questions?
We need approval of the financial statements for September.
So moved.
Thank you. Second. Motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Payroll and claims were in your packet. If you had a chance to review them, we need a motion on the approval of those.
I move approval.
Thank you. We have a motion. Second, please.
I consent.
Thank you. Motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Before the adjournment, well, I guess the upcoming events, we've already talked about the beam signing. That's also the day of the EMS vote, right?
I think that's important.
November 7th.
The 7th?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't forget that. Otherwise, meetings as stated. All right, I call for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you.
Okay. This got one.
All day. Aye.